Hey guys, I actually have another paper review for you today, and as you can see here, it's actually on two Rhodia pads. These are both number 16, block number 16 pads. Let's actually just cheat a little bit and go to the back of one of these. Yeah, there we go. Block number 16. I remember. It's basically an A5 size pad. I have two. I got one version in unlined and one version in lined. Just kind of showing you how they come packaged. Oh, look, you can see my desk. Messy desk, ink, Rockstar, a glass. And you can see my lighting on top. So, you basically can see this paper is actually packaged a little differently than the regular Clairefontaine. The regular Rhodia pads. Here's a regular number 16 pad in a graph white, and these don't get the special treatment of plastic wrapping or anything. And actually, if you look at the cover, you'll actually see that this is a little matte, whereas this is glossy. It's a little glossy because of the covering, but wait, no, there is no covering on this. My mistake. Yeah, so you can see the regular pads are glossy versus this is a matte finish. And that's because this is their premium R pads, you can see here. And the covers themselves feel rubberized. Both the front and the back, it has a more premium feeling to it. I don't know if the mic will pick that up, but you can hear this is scratchy. This is smooth with more friction because of the glossy finish to it. I'm gonna set this off to the side. Actually, it's not really necessary. I just wanted to show you how it came when it was packaged brand new. So yeah, this paper is the premium paper. It is 90 grams per square meter instead of the typical 80 grams per square meter that Rhodia has. And if you actually look, it's an off-white. I don't know if how well you'll be able to tell. I would consider this more an ivory or cream, actually. To be honest, I'm not really. In my opinion, they're both kind of the same thing. I know some people are gonna be very upset that I said that, but it's not an off-white. It's an ivory or a cream. And because it's 90 gram paper, it's thicker. So fun fact: if you actually buy these two pads, you will get less paper, less sheets with the premium pad than you do with the regular pads. I believe these pads come with 70 sheets. Actually, let's cheat again and look at the back. Yes, there we go. 70 sheets, 90 grams per square meter, equates to 41-pound paper. Where did I put that other pad? Here we go. Whereas this one actually comes with 80 sheets at 80 grams per square meter, and it's 21.3-pound paper. So, the pads are the same thickness. But because, well, actually, this feels a little bit thicker. Whatever, semantics. But because this is thicker paper, you get less sheets per pad. In terms of the feeling of the pads, it's very smooth. It's, I would say, comparable to Clairefontaine, regular Clairefontaine paper. Obviously, Clairefontaine has bought the Rhodia name, but I believe the Rhodia factory still makes their own paper, and the Clairefontaine makes their own paper as well. So it's not like the two papers are the same. Now, as to which factory is making this paper, I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Clairefontaine is actually making this for the Rhodia factory. I could be wrong. You may want to check your own sources online. But it writes very similar to Clairefontaine paper as well. It's very smooth. It's very nice. It's good for people who want the same Clairefontaine writing experience, but don't want the super bright white of Clairefontaine paper. I know some people, they don't really, some people really like the bright white. Other people not so much because it kind of tires out your eyes a little bit when you're staring at it for a long period of time. And honestly, certain inks just kind of look better with an off-white paper. One thing I actually like about the premium pads, and it's not really displayed on this pad, but on the pad that I don't have opened yet, is the lined versions. Now, I don't actually have a lined block number 16 Rhodia pad here to show you. And the main reason why I don't like the lined version is because the lined version has a margin. Now, on their A4 size pad, block number 18, I believe, the line version also has a margin. It makes sense on that size of paper to have a margin because it's, an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Not quite 8.5 by 11, but you know what I mean. This is a 5 by 8, and it actually has, I believe, the same size margin as the A4, which makes no sense to me because basically the margin is gonna come up to where my pen is, and you're stuck, writing with very little room left to write normally, unless you want to write into the margin. And in my opinion, that just looks ugly. I'm not gonna open the other pad yet until I need it, but take my word for it, the line version of the premium pads do not have a margin on them, which is nice. I believe they are 7 or 8 millimeter rulings. One downside of the premium pads, at least for now, 2013, you don't know what they're going to come up with in the future, is that they're lacking dot graph and grid. So I have my everyday pad here. You can see regular Rhodia paper, super bright white with the 5x5 millimeter grid. Fun fact, whenever you get a pad on the and it says 5x5 on the back, paper all over the place. There you go. Here's a cute little number 10 pad. Oh, there's some stuff on there, so let's not open that. This 5x5 does not indicate the size of the pad. I know, especially with the smaller pads, not like people aren't going to make the same mistake with the larger pads, but with the smaller ones like this, tiny 2x3 or the 3x4s or the 4x5s, people think that 5x5 is the dimensions of the pad itself. No, the 5x5 is the dimension of the graphs, and more specifically, the graph boxes are 5mm by 5mm. Just a quick little thing, I get tired of looking at reviews and people are like, oh, the listing was wrong, it's not a 5x5 pad, it's more by 2 by 3 inches. Ignorant people. For those of you who have never seen, this is a dot pad, and that's what the dot pad looks like. Basically, it's still the same 5x5, but instead of having lines, it actually just has dots where the corners of the graph boxes would be. And it's a nice paper because, when you write words, like letters and stuff on this, this is actually an older pad, so it's a little faded out. The newer pads are, much brighter because they're brand new. But it does get distracting when you write on this kind of paper. It gets distracting. Like, you see grid lines are all over the place. The dot pad is nice because for people who like me who don't have the best handwriting, for those who can't really write super, in a straight line consistently, and who need limits on where to stop their loops and everything, it's nice because when you read it, it's not as obtrusive, but you basically still kind of have a guideline. You can kind of see like a ghost of a line in there with the dots versus with blank paper. So, let me just write a little bit with this paper, see how it performs. Like I said, I've written on this before. It is super, super smooth. I'll stop talking so you can hear if there's any scratchiness and whatnot. For some reason, like always, I start off in print and I end up going into cursive. For me, writing in cursive is just more natural with a fountain pen. It's difficult for me to write in, this writing experience is so smooth that I just feel like doing loops and everything, versus with something like a ballpoint, it's just not as smooth, and you want to keep as little time of having the tip of the pen on the paper as possible, so it's much more better experience to write in print. So this is, my go-to pen, my Lamy 2000 in extra fine with a Sukiyo. Let's go to a Flex pen. Flex pen is nice to test the feathering of the paper, feathering properties of the paper, as well as, any show-through, echoing, or bleed-through that you may get because of the pure amount of ink that gets put on here. You know, instead of going with the quick brown fox, let's write something else. I don't know what the hell I'm doing there. So you can see, with no lines, my handwriting looks like crap. My flex nib writing definitely looks a lot better on the graph because I'm constricted on the top and the bottom. It's easier for me to measure how the loops are going to look, and definitely my writing is a lot straighter. You know, it's not to say like my writing is super crooked normally, but you can still see it does start sloping down. What it is because I write with my fingers a lot, and I rotate at the wrist instead of at the arm, so you tend to get more sloping the further on you write. You know, versus, let's see, I have some scribbling on some graph here. Versus, you see here, much more constrained. So, some practice paper there. So, looks better with the graphs. I do wish that they would put out a dot graph. I can definitely see that they won't put out a 5x5 because it looks bad for this premium paper and the premium look of, like, I've never really seen graphed ivory paper. So, but a dot, I think a dot would look nice. Just my opinion. Can I use a... I suppose you could use a guide sheet. You know, if you put something underneath and you kind of bend it down, you can't see the grid underneath. So there's that. What is on here? Never mind. And actually, you know what? And let me try out some Lexington Gray. I know I've had issues with feathering with Lexington Gray. You know, just with regular writing, not necessarily even with flex writing. Let's just put my name down. Very smooth with a medium nib, that's for sure. It's much smoother than the regular 80-gram Rhodia paper. So, let's take a quick up-close look. Shading is decent. It's decent, you know, it's hard to see shading with an extra fine nib. But we'll go to the Lexington Gray. You can see very slight feathering, unfortunately. Just, it's not really focusing that well. But, you know, there is feathering there. In terms of drying time, not the best. I can definitely see this wet R has not dried yet. Let me just, there you go. You can see it's, because it is thicker paper, it doesn't, and because it's smoother paper, it doesn't really have the surface area to absorb ink as well as, say, the regular Rhodia paper. What about bleed through? Perforated pad. Very nice. Minimal echoing. And because it's not a white paper, and you know it's actually ivory colored paper, echoing is not as noticeable. That's for sure. Just because there's color there, versus you know what you might get echoing on white very easily. This is same Lexington Gray in a medium nib. Definitely not as noticeable. No bleed through at all, which is nice. One complaint I do have about regular 80-gram Rhodia paper is that when you do flex nib writing, where the pen dumps out a lot of ink, you do get quite a bit of bleed through. Here, not a hint of bleed through at all, just echoing, which is good. Yeah, here. You can see here, there's some flex writing. This bleed through is not as bad. It's not enough to really imprint onto the next sheet, but you can definitely see like here's some bleed through, and there's some bleed through. This was actually with a friendlier slightly drier ink. If you were to use a wetter ink, it'll probably bleed through. So in terms of this, like the price of the paper is a little more expensive. I believe generally you can get A5 size pads, the number, block number 16s, for $5 to $6 for 80 sheets, depending on where you buy it. These go for a few dollars more. I know you can get the premium pad for $7 for 70 sheets. So the price for the pad itself just goes up a little bit, $1 or $2, but you are getting less paper. Do keep that in mind. For someone who takes a lot of notes, it's not really like scratch paper, I suppose you could say. I may normally use Rhodia as scratch paper just because it's some of the cheapest friendly, fountain pen friendly paper out there. This one's a little more expensive, and because I don't really like this kind of color for everyday scratch paper writing, I think it's a waste. This will definitely be more for like stationery, for quick notes, quick letters where I may throw into a package, not necessarily something that I'll put into an envelope to mail out because it is a smaller piece of paper, but definitely something to include in boxes and packages that I send out. It's not meant for long letters. You don't want to squeeze a lot onto a small piece of paper. For that, in that case, I'm definitely going to stick with A4 size paper. I'm not sure. They do come in a variety of sizes for the premium pads. I'm not sure if they have an A4 version out. Although, since the pad is right here, we may as well flip to back and take a look. Okay. They do have A4. Very nice. Okay, so they actually have 12, which is the 8x12, which is, 8x12 centimeters. Well, it's 3x4, 3x5. Then they have the 16, which is what this is. Then they have A4, and then they also have A4 legal. For those of you who don't know, quick fun fact, the A4 is not A4 size, like official, like it's not legal size because, it does use up some paper on the top staple binding. So the legal version is slightly longer, just by like an inch, I believe, or a little less than an inch. So you get a full legal sheet of paper. And you can see the premium pads only come in 2 rulings, which they show is 2 and 4. And if you look in the bottom there, come on, focus camera. Come on, focus. Focus. Lined in margin and blank, which makes no sense because I am pretty sure there are no margins. So I'm not sure why that says that. Huh. You know what? I threw it over to my bed. Ugh. I think 2, they always say lined in margin, but it's not really lined in margin. Because, if you look at the regular pad, it gives you a, that's French ruling, lined with margins, and 5x5 graph. But I'm pretty, man, they're making me open this brand new. I'm like 99% sure that there are no margins on this pad, which is why I got it. And I'm going to be very disappointed if there are margins on this pad. I didn't want to open this yet because I didn't plan on using it. I don't like having too much open paper around. Kind of gives it more chance to get messed up. See, there you go. I was right. See? Lined, unmargined. Well, okay. It's a big margin on top. Maybe that's what they mean by the margin. But there's no side margin. There. Alright, that's it. So yeah, definitely a nice paper. I would highly suggest it for small letters. Small notes that you may throw into a box. Not really nice looking, like not really sized well for like letters and envelopes. Although I suppose they do make A5 sized envelopes for letters. But for long letters, I prefer A4 instead of squeezing things onto A5. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. And thanks for